Alrighty, welcome back to my channel, Made Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we are starting my Stormlight Archive reread vlog. Now my camera only has a couple percent on it right now, so I'm not going to get too in-depth. Actually, I'll probably just switch to my phone, but I figured I would do the intro with my camera while it's still alive. So this is going to be my third time rereading the first two books in the series. So The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. And it'll be my second time rereading Oathbringer, Rhythm of WoR, and the novellas, so Edgedancer and Dawn Shard. I'm rereading all of these in anticipation for Wind and Truth. Of course, this December, I am with the rest of the fantasy universe with the hype for this book. I cannot wait. I love the Cosmere as a whole, but Stormlight Archive is definitely my favorite aspect of it. So I wanted to capture my journey of rereading these on the way to Wind and Truth. This is going to be the end of the first arc, which is so exciting. So where am I right now? I am doing the audiobook for The Way of Kings. I just don't have time to sit down to read that physically at the moment because I'm also part of the Spiffbo competition and I have to prioritize those reads as a judge right now. So I am doing the audio. I've done The Way of Kings once physical, once via audio, so this is my second time through, and I am loving it. I'm currently listening to it on YouTube because Brando Sando put it on there for free, like the amazing person that he is. At least not the whole thing. He put on the first part, I think, so that's the first 9 or 10 chapters, and I just finished chapter 8. I am on hold for the audio from my library, but there's a long wait, so I'm really hoping it'll come in the next day or two. I reserved it a couple days ago, or put on my hold a couple days ago, so I'm really hoping it'll come in once I finish what's available on YouTube. But so far, I am loving being back in this world. I forgot that one of my favorite things about the world building is all the cool little tidbits about how the high storms affect the world, all the rock buds, and explaining how the world has adapted to these massive storms. I forgot that that was one of my favorite aspects, so I am just eating that up this time around. The only thing that has been less enjoyable this time around is the second prologue, because I already know how the magic system works. And while I know why that's there, and I remember the first and second time I read it, I was riveted by that particular scene. This time around, I was kind of like, okay, I know how lashings work, right? So that's the only thing that I think upon reread might be something I would skip going forward. I'm not 100% sure, but that's the only thing that has been any less enjoyable than the first 2 times I've read it. Also, Kaladin's sad boy nature does get on my nerves later in the series a little bit, but in this first book, he's such a cute sad boy. Hello. It has been about 2 weeks since I filmed the initial clip to start this vlog. My life has been a little wild recently, and I had to focus on prioritizing finishing my Spiffbo reads because we had to get our finalist out into the world, and I've barely had any time to read. So any time I did have was dedicated to reading that book. And I was also listening to the audiobook of The Way of Kings. And while I have requested it from my library, it's a 15-week wait. And so I was listening to the free, about first third of the book that Sando put on YouTube. He uploaded it for free, bless him. So I was listening to that. And then I finished that. And I was waiting to see if it would come in from my library, but it's taking so long. And I think I might make an exception and actually purchase this audiobook so I can listen to it. I typically don't purchase audiobooks because I don't re-listen to them really after. If I'm going to reread something, it's almost always physical because I know that I like it and I want to spend time with it type of thing. But the Cosmere is something I think I'm going to be rereading often enough in my life that I'm going to be using the audio quite frequently. So I think I'm going to purchase the audiobook for the Stormlight Archive for all 4 of them. So I guess the correct would have been the audiobooks. Sorry, it's late. little tired. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that tonight because I feel like I would definitely use them going forward in the future, so it wouldn't be a waste of like a one-time purchase. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I will be able to focus back on the Stormlight Archive and really dive in, like I mentioned in my first check-in, I think I did anyway, that once I was finished with the immediate Spiffbo reads, that was my plan for the fall. Initially, I wanted to read some of the Cosmere physically, and I still might read a couple of the novellas physically, but I think I'm going to go with audio for the 4 main installments. So, what were my thoughts so far? Where I'm at right now in the first book is that Shallan is, I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but she is moving herself into the position that she wants to be in. And Kaladin has just made the first really big choice that is the catalyst for his arc going forward. The first big choice to not give in to some of his baser impulses. So maybe you'll know what scene I'm talking about when I say that. You know, I have to decide if I want these to be spoiler free or not. I don't know, I feel like there will be more of a benefit from this if they're full of spoilers. Let me contemplate that between this check-in and the next check-in, and I'll decide which way I'm gonna go with this. But I am thoroughly enjoying myself being immersed back in this world. I'm remembering why I love it so much. The environment and the intricacies of the design of the Shattered Plains and how the high storms interact with that scenery. I'd forgotten how much I love that, like, physical natural setup is just such a unique setting, and there's a lot of little details that I had forgotten since my last reread, so I'm thoroughly enjoying those little tidbits of world building. Also, I know a lot of people don't like Shallan, but like, I love her and her chaos vibes. So I'm really enjoying seeing her in her kind of infancy form before she kind of comes into her own. I'm really enjoying seeing that part of her character again as well. And also, we've just met a couple characters where now that I know the reveals and what they end up being, it adds a whole new, like, sinister backdrop and vibe to all of the interactions that we have with them. Whereas before, it would have seemed benevolent or innocent. So it's really interesting to reread this book with all of the full knowledge we've gotten all the way through Rhythm of War so far. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this reread. Truly, these books hold up really well upon a couple, go-throughs. More than a couple, I'm sure, but they hold up really well. There's enough details that you can feel like you're rediscovering things, if it's been long enough. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. I don't know if I've said that enough times, but let me just add once more there. Yeah, I think, like I said, I'm going to purchase the audiobooks tonight, and then I'm going to continue really diving in now because I just finished my Spiffbo read tonight. So let's do this. Hello, quick check-in here. Oh, I still have my blue light glasses on. I forgot about that. I wonder how long I've been wearing those when I didn't need to. So I'm just checking in real quick. I'm between jobs at the moment. This morning I planned to listen to more of The Way of Kings because I did purchase it last night. But I ended up watching Olivia Rizalate's new weekly vlog. Like, sorry, not sorry. Those are my comfort vlogs, okay? As soon as she releases them, I watch them. But last night I did get some listening done. And I did also contemplate and also put a poll out on Twitter whether I wanted to make this spoiler free or full of spoilers. And we're gonna go full on spoilers, I've decided. So I will have a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. I'm sure you would have already seen it, I suppose, by the magic of editing, that these spoilers start here at this point in the vlog, but I want to be able to talk about specific characters, theories, things like that. Like, that's the fun part of rereading. So starting now, if you have not read all of the Stormlight Archive up to Rhythm of War, including the novellas, get your ass out of here, okay? I'm gonna be spoiling is the word I wanted to say, like without any care, starting now. So, but yeah, last night I got through the 3 first interludes, which is still wild. I forget just how dense these books are when you're like, yeah, the first 3 sets of interludes. Oh, it sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud sometimes. But anyway, I mean, I'm here for all of the Stormlight Archive content, so who am I to complain? But I got through the first 3 interludes, and I'd forgotten how brutal Balat is. Like, I think that's his name. Shallan's brother, when he's pulling the legs off of that crab, I'm like, oh. As soon as it started happening, I was like, oh, I remember. He's like Loki, a psychopath, and likes to kill animals. I didn't remember until it started happening, and I was like, oh, this is making me feel icky. Animal torture is just one of those things that I cannot do. I stopped reading The Deep. Well, no, it wasn't The Deep. The Troop by Nick Cutter. The Deep is one that I finished, but I stopped reading The Troop by him because I got through one animal torture scene and there was another one ramping up, and I was like, absolutely not. So it's one of the things that I don't handle well or refuse to handle in books, really. So it was just kind of like a jump scare for me. It was just one moment, but that really stuck out to me last night. And also Seth, oh, poor Seth. Like, knowing that he ends up becoming a Knights Radiant and knowing his arc makes this reflection on where he started like such a, well, he's never not a sad, depressed boy, let me take that back, but seeing him just kind of still believing in the whole idea of being truthless and watching him suffer through that, knowing that in the end, knowing that he realizes he didn't have to, is just, it's a whole other level of brutal. Like, the poor guy, you know? But I was starting to fall asleep after the interludes when the next like full chapter started, so I just turned it off because I didn't want to miss any. So I will be continuing that because I have a little bit of time in between my jobs that I plan to do some kind of like more around the house stuff, and I can listen at that time. And I know Elhokar is going to start popping up soon, and he is so annoying. I remember reading The Way of Kings and being like, get this man-child off of the page. Like, I was so annoyed by him, and I have a feeling that that's going to happen again. So I just need to prepare myself for him to enter the chat. But I think the next chapter is when he does that. So I'm enjoying myself, though. I have all these thoughts even from just the interludes. So I'm very happy to be focusing on this and being back in the world. You'll hear back from me soon. Hey there! So I thought I would just check in. I am about to leave for work. I have done 2 jobs this morning, and then I have my 3rd one this afternoon. One of the 2 I did this morning was actually our page 2ing with St. Gibson. One of the most insightful, touching conversations I've had in recent memory. Saint is just phenomenal with her insights and why she writes the things that she does. Spending the morning talking about Gothic themes and how important love is in the lives of humans is just... Look, listen, it is technically a job because I do a lot of work for those things, but also one of the best ways to start my day. Did take a little pick-me-up nappy nap, about a 20-minute power nap there, and I am now about to head out. So the whole point of all of that rambling is I wanted to just touch base with you guys about my audio experience, my journey before destination, right, with the Way of Kings. I got 2 more chapters in last night, I think. And I haven't been able to listen so far today, but on the way to work, I plan to. I'm going to ride my bike. It's beautiful today, and put on my audiobook. It's going to be divine. But the main point that I have from the last couple chapters that I listened to, I think I'm around chapter 15 now, is that my baby boy, Rock, has been introduced. Okay? Rock and the Lopin are 2 of my favorite characters in the entire series. I don't care if they're side characters. I don't care. The book would not be the same if they weren't there. And Rock, if I have to choose one, it's probably Rock. And he just called Kaladin crazy for the first time, and I'm like, yes. Oh, I can't wait for this development that I know is coming. Oh, I cannot wait. It's one of the things that brings me the most joy in the entire series. So I am so excited to go take this little mini bike ride now. Get my ass to work. And I will check back in with you guys when I have more cohesive thoughts. But for now, main thought is, fuck yes, Rock has entered the chat. I am back for another Way of Kings audio update. I have been eating up this audiobook the last couple days between work sessions. It's been so fantastic being back in this world. So, as I mentioned, my baby Rock is back in there. The Lopin has now made his entrance. And I feel like in this particular book, I'm just a side character girly. Like, I like Shallan, and Kaladin is I like him more in this book than I remember liking him in later books, as I mentioned. So I don't dislike our main characters in any way, shape, or form. But there's just something about the side characters that like make this whole book for me. Speaking of, one of the interludes in the second set of interludes here, Axis the Collector, okay? I forgot completely about this interlude and this character, and I want to know so much more about him. In my memory, he also has one more interlude. I think it's in Words of Radiance. It might be an Oathbringer, in one of those, where he's on one of the, I think it's Reshi Isles. I think we do get to check back in with him there. And I remember adoring that interlude as well. So I want to know more about him. I'm a big fan of irreverent characters that can have a sense of humor in most situations when others wouldn't. The fact that he can heal himself, change his body at will, and the fact that he just travels the world gathering information about Spren. I want a whole side quest story with just him and his adventures and what he's gotten into. I would just love to live that life. Maybe that's why I want to learn more about him, because if I had to pick the life of a character in this book, it might be his. I'm tracking my progress in the physical book, but I am relying mostly on audio right now. But I noticed this is the Golance edition, the second edition of this that they released a couple years ago. But as I was going through to put my bookmark in where I currently was, like there's a whole section of this book that is not glued. It's just like a pocket of the book that comes out, and it's kind of frustrating because it's like, come on, y'all. I mean, it's kind of convenient if the whole book came apart this way. I suppose I could take it with me in little snippets, but it's just like one little snippet from page 595 to 622. And also in this section as well, the printing is off. Let me show you. If you look here, why don't I just take it out? That's silly. I don't know why I lifted the whole book when I could just take the insert out. Right here you can see like it's off center, like the numbers off the page. It does center back later, but yeah, it was just kind of like frustrating that happened to my book, but I guess it is what it is. I've discovered it now. I have the entire UK edition set. See, it sticks out too. That I found it. It's very frustrating. But yeah, I have the whole UK hardback edition set because I want this aesthetic. But I am kind of disappointed at the flimsiness of the spine of all of these editions. Even with the ones that I've read multiple times, I have to be really careful with them because they get real flimsy real quick. So I must say that, yeah, the spines on these, not the best. It makes me a little nervous to reread them for years and years to come. Maybe they'll all end up looking like this. Actually, my Goblet of Fire is the most read Harry Potter book in my collection, and it's basically become all of these like little inserts because the glue has come off over the years, so I just take out the section that I'm reading when I'm rereading it for the gajillionth time. So maybe that's what the series will become, but I don't know. These editions I kind of want to preserve, so I'm kind of deciding what to do about that. But anyway, back to the actual content of the book. Shallan has now stolen the Soulcaster from Yasna, and she's going through her first of many moral crises that she encounters in this series. Where am I with Kaladin right now? He survived the High Storm and is now struggling to come to grips with the fact that the Bridgemen are now, he's realized that they're bait, and he's struggling with that reality, trying not to slip into depression again. So I'm right now on the chapter called The Wretch, but they just got assigned steady chasm duty, and we know that that's when Bridge 4 really starts to come together, and that continues into Words of Radiance. So I can't wait for that arc to start happening. Last note I have right now is that anytime Taravangian is on page, like Rhythm of WoR, I already told you guys spoilers were going to be very clear here, but let me just reiterate, if you haven't read Rhythm of WoR, get out of this video, okay? Just saying that now. But anytime Taravangian is on the page, I'm like, oh, not you, not the person that becomes Odium. Like, what? He's just like beat bopping around, and every time I see him on page, I'm like, you're so unassuming. Just knowing what he ends up becoming is wild. So that kind of retrospective view on this series has been a blast to have as well. If you look at where my what's the word, bookmark is, I am about 60% of the way through, a little over 60. So with the way that I've been listening to this book, I think I'm going to make a lot of progress tonight as well. I have about 20 hours left. So within the next 48 hours, I can foresee myself finishing The Way of Kings and moving on to Words of Radiance. I think I will physically read the novellas, Edgedancer and Dawnshard. But you know, Edgedancer isn't until after Words of Radiance, I believe. So yeah, I'll do the next audio for Words of Radiance. I might pick up a physical book. I'm not sure. That it won't be in this vlog because this is specifically focused on my reread of Stormlight Archive, but What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher is the book that I'm eyeing to pick up physically next. So I might split some of my time. I don't know, but I'm thoroughly enjoying just like being in this world and only this world, so that might not happen. I'm just rambling at this point, so I'll check back in with you guys once I've made more progress. Okay guys, I finished it. I finished the audiobook yesterday, I think, and I've already downloaded Words of Radiance. I've listened to just the first chapter or two, which is basically nothing in these behemoths, but I wanted to sit down and talk about my feelings on The Way of Kings before I really get sucked into Words of Radiance, which is my favorite in the series, so I have a feeling I'm really going to lose myself in it soon. The end of this book, the last 250 pages of this book are so incredibly good. I remember not being able to put it down the first time I read it and being impressed by it still the second time around and still the third time around. It's interesting that there were different points that stood out to me this time. Although there's always a point that stands out to me, that point seems to change because the last 250 pages of this book just hits so many of those main things we all live in fantasy. The emotional beats, the drawing together of all of the plot threads, the awesome fight sequences, the payoff of the slow development of Kaladin. All of those things come together in one beautiful Sanderlanche just explosion. This time around, Tien's death scene, I was crying. I was listening to the audiobook while I was cleaning the house, and I just started like sobbing while I was hanging up laundry, listening to Tien's death scene. I had remembered that it was sudden. You know, we don't get to say goodbye to Tien, and I knew that was coming because I knew that fact, but I had forgotten just how heartbreaking and awful Kaladin's reaction to that is. And he's on this bloody, disgusting battlefield with all of these bodies after everyone's left, just hugging the corpse of his dead baby brother. Like, I was crying quite heavily during that part, and I needed to pause for a second to kind of collect myself. I don't remember crying my eyes out like that previously, so I don't know if it's because I'm a mom now. I don't know if it's because I'm older and those kinds of scenes hit harder for me. I don't know, but all I know is that it hit. And then the second scene that really hit for me this time around is an emotional beat, which had me tearing up for another reason. Was I have bookmarked it because I didn't want to forget to mention it here. When Kaladin is deciding to bring Bridge 4 back to save Dalnar's troops, he says, he's recalling what his father says, which is somebody has to start. Somebody has to step forward and do what is right because it is right. If nobody starts, then others cannot follow. And that theme is quite strong in this book, and I believe it gets stronger in Words of Radiance if I remember correctly, but I adore that theme. As someone who is always trying to find the kinder option in a situation, I've talked about that a little bit with this part of my tattoo tour, and I think it can deceivingly look like weakness or naivete when someone makes the choice to be kind or honorable in a situation. And it is a choice. That's one thing I want to make sure is clear here. A lot of people who show kindness in difficult situations or honor or loyalty in particular situations are aware of what it looks like, but have chosen to do it anyway. And I think that this book does such a good job of showing the strength of the people who choose to do that. we happen to get to see that strength portrayed outwardly with Kaladin and his like level up to being a Knight's Radiant, which is such an amazing emotional plot beat, you know, plot beat, whatever I'm trying to say. We get to see that externally, but in real life, you don't always get to do that. And I just love that that theme was so strongly represented here, more than I remember it being. So that really hit for me as well. Sadeas is just as slimy and hate-worthy as I remember, and I cannot wait for Adolin to give him his comeuppance in Words of Radiance. It's gonna be such a beautiful scene. Cannot wait for it. I loved where I left Shallan as well, kind of coming into her own a little bit, realizing her own capabilities. And I'd also forgotten just how lucky she is that she can also... And I'd also forgotten like just how lucky she is that she's also a Radiant, because she wouldn't have been able to say a word edgewise to Yasna ever again if she didn't happen to manifest those powers. Like, I'd forgotten how much Yasna just flat out hated her until she revealed, like, you can't get rid of me because actually I had these powers. You know, like, I forgot how much that was the main point that got her back into Yasna's good graces. But yeah, I love where we left off with her. And I remember so vividly the Santhid scene, which is the beginning of Words of Radiance. And that's how I knew I was going to love that book, okay, from like page 1. So I can't wait to read that. I've started the that chapter, but I haven't gotten to the point where she dives in the water yet. And I just love the little baby, chaotic, crazy ass Shallan is starting to find her way. Not that she's found it yet so far in the series, but you know, we're getting there. Also, all the cryptic references to the Desolations. I think Adonasium is also, I think I butchered that word, but you know what I'm talking about. It's also mentioned in here as well. And I was like, oh, I know, that's a thing that I know now. So there were a couple moments like that where I was like, oh, I know that thing. And those moments increase as the series continues. So I can't wait for that. I'm such a sucker for that. That's why I love the Lost Metal so much, because that book is just that. If you know enough about the Cosmere, not just that, but it's a huge part of it. Where if you know enough about the Cosmere, you're like, yes, so many Easter eggs, right? So I can't wait for that, the frequency of those things to also increase. There was a point in the middle of this book where I felt slightly bored, like it was a bit slower, because it was giving me information that I already knew in a way that wasn't as engaging as I remember it being, because I wasn't discovering it for the first time, right? So things that don't necessarily come to fruition later as a heavier plot point, but we needed them to move, you know, this particular book forward, things like that. But I think that's just the nature of rereading a book that is part of a larger interlocking series. Some of the world building done in the first book is going to be something, or world building, some of the plot points done in the first book is going to be, you know, less necessary later. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's enough to knock this down for 5 stars at all. Overall, it's so good, and the Sanderlanche is chef's kiss. So I am now moving on to Words of Radiance. I'm thinking for this vlog I'll do Words of Radiance and then I'll read Edgedancer. I don't recall enjoying that so much, so we'll see how that novella goes this time around, but I do have that physically. I have the audiobook for Words of Radiance, and then yeah, I'll do Edgedancer physically, and then I think I'll end this first part of the reread. But if I read at the pace and listen at the pace that I have been, I really do think I'm going to be on track to finish this by December, which is like, I'm as surprised as you, okay? I was supposed to start this reread in like July. Bless my patrons, because a bunch of them did start it and I didn't. So we're playing catch up, but I think we might get there. Thank God for audiobooks, truly. I'll check in with you guys soon, but I'm gonna go edit a video that you guys are gonna receive before this one. So touch base with you soon. I think it's about time that we do a Words of Radiance update. The ridiculous amount of tabs here. Oh God, one of my favorite books and one of my all-time favorite series, so it's not really surprising. Right now I am on page 211, which is just at the beginning of part 2. So I just finished the second set of interludes. So let's go through some thoughts. I have them. This is going to sound really random, but this is the first book where we see a depiction of a thunderclast coming to be. And am I the only one that always pictures like the ice titan from the Hercules, the Disney Hercules movie. This thing right here. That's what I always picture when someone describes a thunderclast, or like a mixture between the rock titan and the ice titan. That's just what I see in my head. I'm sure someone out there with more artistic ability than myself has made a really epic rendition of a thunderclast, but that's what I see in my head, and I wonder if anyone else gets those vibes and thinks of that too. Let's talk about some character stuff though. I remember at first being so distraught, thinking that Yasna's dead, and I'm so relieved that I don't have to be in that mindset anymore because I know she's just in Shadesmar. But yeah, that scene destroyed me when I first read it. But what I'm really enjoying is seeing Shallan come into her own and really discover how good she is at lying or telling half-truths or projecting things that she wishes other people to see. Her first interaction with the slavers and how she manifests influence and power just by acting like she already has it is just such a interesting microcosm moment of a truth about humanity, because this is very much the case. We do have real physical power, of course, but the acknowledgement and the recognition of soft power is such an interesting balancing act that comes from, you know, fake it till you make it, and also actually having that true confidence within yourself. So it's interesting seeing her develop that outer skill of having other people perceive it while not having that internal work done yet. I just love seeing her start on that journey. Also, I remember one of the other reasons that I love this book so much is the humor. The I am a stick moment made me giggle. And there was one point where I actually laughed out loud, which was my baby Rock, of course, when he was joking with Kaladin and he swung a large log at Kaladin's head during a training sequence. And Kaladin said, well, you threw a tree at me. And he said, was a small tree and a very hard head. And I was like, yes. Just in the delivery, Michael Kramer of Rock's voice, it brings me so much joy. I actually laughed out loud listening to that. I also adore Rhysand. I always have. I love Darnshard for a reason. She is one of my favorite characters that appears in the interludes. And, you know, she just had her fall in this past interlude section from the head of the Great Shell. And knowing that she now has Chiri Chiri by her side because she decided to make that choice and be that bold, I can't wait to reread Darnshard. But those two are together now, and I am so happy about it. I also remember how much I enjoyed getting the perspective of Eshonai finally, and getting to know more about the listeners and their culture and what they really are at their core. I remember eating this up when I first started reading it because it was answering so many questions that I had from The Way of Kings. Pattern also cracks me up, and I love the way that his kind of shaky voice, you know, is done in the audiobook. I love that he's seen as basically a bumbling child or imbecilic in the beginning, and he slowly puts the pieces together with us, the reader. It's a really smart writing technique that Sando used there. Dalinar, having now made his decision and setting Adolin free to duel as much as his heart desires. I just can't wait to start reading those scenes. We all know it's coming, you know, and for my boon, like, oh God, you know. But then we also get Honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. You know, so we get both of those throughout dueling, so, you know, take the good with the bad, right? Basically, I'm thoroughly enjoying myself as much as I thought I would, and I can't wait to continue. Also, as a little break or interlude for this vlog itself, I thought that I would do a Broken Binding unboxing. I haven't done one of these in a hot minute because I haven't been filming Japan Life vlogs because I'm doing this reread vlog and another one also. I can't do like a life vlog at the same time. So I always unbox these in those, but I thought, why not include it in this one? I am 99.9% sure that this is the Dragonbone chair. By Tad Williams. It has the art by Jeff Brown. And I mean, I'd already seen the print done by Jeff, but I can't wait to see the full-sized cover in person. I believe it's going to be stunning. Yep, so here we have Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. God, this is a heavy book. The Dragonbone chair. And as always, we have a quote on the bookmark. Books are a form of magic because they span time and distance more surely than any spell or charm. if that ain't the truth. Always beautifully packaged with a bow. I have so many of these ribbons now, and I don't know what to do with them. If anyone who's crafty out there has an idea of what I can do with my millions of ribbons from the broken binding, let me know, because I'm at a loss. Woo, she's a chunky girl. Oh, I can already see how crisp the edge is here, the art on the edge. So the back cover says, "Honor is a wonderful thing, but it is a means, not an end. A man who starves with honor does not help his family. A king who falls on his sword with honor does not save his kingdom." Looks like we're going to be dealing with some moral ambiguity in this series, which I love. There's a spine, and then if we come around to the glorious front, wow, that is a thing of beauty. Just the scale that's able to be captured in just this short amount of space is wild. I also love the typography here. And then these are the edges that I mentioned. Look at how crisp the print of that sword is. Let me push the top pages together there. That is stunning. Then we have the absolutely gorgeous foiling design on the naked hardcover. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I love that spine, how it's framed like that, and the sword on the back. Okay, then we have our end pages, back end pages, and of course, as always, numbered and signed. You know, on page 2ing, we were so lucky to be able to talk with Tad Williams. And ever since then, my interest in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn has been so strong because of the way that Tad talked about how he was in conversation with authors that he's always compared to, like the Tolkiens of the world, and how the similarities and the differences in his writing are there purposefully. It's not something that he stumbled upon. And just hearing him talk so intelligently about those themes that he was working with, and being so candid with us in his interview about how his life story affected the way he chose to write this series, and also reading the quote on the back, I can feel that these books are going to deal really deeply with some themes that I care about and love to read in my writing. So I've had this on my what's it called? Classic fantasy TBR, which is a very slow moving beast of a TBR that I just kind of have in the background, where I'm trying to read books that I deem more classic based on when I was born and when I started reading. And Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn is part of that. And I just haven't picked it up yet because she's a chonker. And, you know, this year just hasn't been the best year for reading for me so far. So picking up a book like this would be a big time dedication. And I'm waiting until the right moment for that. But having this gorgeous edition of a book that I strongly believe that I'm going to end up loving, just, I can't believe this is in my hands. I'm so excited. Also, I'll be sure to link the page chewing with Tad Williams down below. He's such a delightful, open, kind-hearted human. And I still think about the conversation we had with him to this day. So I'll have that link down below if you guys are interested in checking that out. But I am so happy to have this in my hands. And when I get to it, y'all will know. I'll make sure you know. I forgot how much I hate Elokar. Don't mind the setup here. Okay, we got caught in the rain. Going to the park with Sumire. I took a shower. My hair is still wet. I'm in like extreme cozy mode. But I've been listening to this audiobook like crazy the past couple days. And I think I've only got about 4 hours left of it. So it means I'm probably about, 80% of the way through the physical book right now. Maybe a little more than that. And yeah, I remembered that I didn't like Elokar, but I didn't remember that I like hated him. The way that he reacts after the honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do duel with Adolin and Kaladin, I've forgotten just how viscerally I hated him after his reaction in putting Kaladin in prison. Like, can we not be a piece of shit for like 2 seconds, you know? Like, I don't blame Kaladin for deciding that he needed to die while he was in prison there, because it's like the things that this man chooses to care about, his priorities are so fucked up. I know that we're supposed to dislike him. He's presented in that light, but it works. I dislike that man so much. And I remember being on Kaladin's side, being like, yeah, murder him, let's do it. But now, the point that I'm at right now is Syl is starting to kind of disappear from Kaladin. And then I remembered again the roller coaster of emotion where I was like, oh, but I don't want to lose Syl for that stupid ass choice, you know? Like the roller coaster of emotions, because it's completely valid how Moash and Kaladin feel right now. But it's like in keeping with the somebody has to start vibe, you know? It's like, I don't want them to have to be the ones to start to be like kind here, but it really sticks with the theme, and Syl is a good representation of that. So like, it's just masterful writing the arc that we're going through right now. So the part that I'm at exactly right now is I don't remember if this is part of the Ghost Bloods, or I think it's part of the bad assassination attempts from the group that Moash is involved with, which is not the Ghost Bloods, but the undercover guy from the lumberyard pulled the lever on the bridge that was going across the chasms, and Kaladin and Shallan fell into the chasms. And so now they're together, they're alone, forced proximity kind of thing, but I do not want them together at all. I don't know if that's going to end up happening, but, you know, eventually in the series, but yeah, I don't like them together at all. But this part is cute, like watching them kind of get to know each other. I like how they just butt heads all the time and they don't want to be around each other and yet begrudgingly have to. Like that dynamic is fun. So we're gonna go gallivanting through the chasms, and I remember that the high storm comes, and I remember how they survive it, but I don't recall the exact like conversation that they had between the two of them, where they kind of come to a like homeostasis between the two of them. I don't remember the words actually said there, so I'm really looking forward to re-experiencing that. Another character that I remember that I didn't like but didn't remember the extent to which I didn't like them is Lift. Like I forgot how long her interlude is in this book, and I was like, wow, she annoys me. Like I understand the aspects of her character, and there are parts of her character that I think could be endearing if they weren't just so like beat you over the head, never stops being that way kind of thing. I don't know, when she says awesomeness, it really annoys me. And I didn't realize that that was something that annoyed me until like I talked to Tammy about it, my friend Tammy, and she was like, whenever she says awesomeness, it drives me crazy. And I'm like, you know, I never really pinpointed that as like a source of my annoyance, but I definitely think that it is, because I realized it this time around. I mean, I really love Wendell and how he just like suffers through her presence, but the problem is I feel like Wendell when I'm reading, and it's like I have to suffer through her presence when it's her point of view. I know that it's really important for us to get a look at, I believe it's a herald that's chasing her, the Herald of Justice, who's just like lost his fucking mind, and is trying to, you know, kill all of the Radiance before they can manifest their powers fully. Like I understand that this is the first kind of insight that we get into the details of that, and so it's important. But yeah, I did not enjoy her interludes. But also Zeth, oh, poor tortured baby. You know, he's just figured out that Truthless is a crock of shit, and he's been murdering people for a stupid rock for no reason for, you know, years and years and years now. So bless his heart, poor tortured soul. So he is off to confront Taravangian, I believe that's where he's going now. So yeah, I am thoroughly enjoying this book. The world building is phenomenal. There's been more than one time where I've laughed out loud and enjoyed myself. I should have checked in at those moments as well so I could talk about the good parts of this book, not just the things that are annoying me. But this is my favorite book of one of my favorite series. So even though I'm complaining about characters that I don't like, that doesn't take away from the story at all. Like having unlikable characters is a part of a story. Like the story needs Elokar. I'm just so annoyed by him every time he's on the page, but I know how key and important he is, and I think that he's really important to the flow of the story here. So this book is incredible. I'm still thoroughly enjoying myself. And I remember now how much I grew to love Adolin during this book. Like he's just such a, I don't know, a light everywhere he goes. I used to do this thing called BookTube Bartender on my channel, which I do want to bring back eventually when I have time to like invest in that hobby that I had again. But it's where I make drinks for what I make imaginary drinks for like what imaginary drinks. English. I make cocktails for characters based on what I think they would order at a bar. And for Adolin, I did a margarita, because who doesn't fucking love a margarita? And who doesn't love Adolin? He's phenomenal. And when Kaladin gets out of prison and he realizes that Adolin has been in prison the whole time as well, because Adolin was not going to stand for him being in there. Yes, just, I adore him. Shallan also coming into her own and infiltrating the Ghost Bloods. It's so good. It's so good. All of the plot threads are all starting to come together. We're getting near Sanderlanche territory, so that's exciting. But also all of the character work and groundwork that we've done in the first, 1,000 pages, 1,500 pages of this series. More than that, actually, at this point. Anyway, all of that work that we've done is all starting to come to fruition in such a natural, gratifying way. So I love this book, and I've been eating it up, and I cannot wait to listen more tonight. I was hoping to finish it. I don't know if I'll get to finish it tonight, but I'll finish it definitely by tomorrow, and then I plan to physically read Edgedancer if I can. That's Lift, though, so we'll see how that goes. I remember I struggled a bit with it the first time through, but it's not long, so if I can sit down and read that, I should have a break tomorrow. Actually, not unexpected, but usually I don't have as much of a break from work on Monday as I do tomorrow, so I plan to fill that hopefully with physically reading if I can finish the audio before then. So we shall see. We're making progress, and I'm loving it, and I think this is going to remain my favorite book in the series. Well, it's going to be The Way of Kings, I'm sure, because I didn't get any of that lull that I got from the first one. Like the world building lull, because all that base work's kind of already done. So yeah, I didn't have any of that dip. So this one's definitely going to be top. We'll see if Oathbringer or Rhythm of War can knock it down upon, reread and reflection on those stories. But so far, Words of Radiance is really, it's looking good for it. I listened to a lot more last night. I think I've got about maybe 2 hours left in the audiobook. And I realized during yesterday's update that I didn't explain how much I'm enjoying Eshonai and Venli's perspectives as well. Getting a better understanding of the listener's perspective and seeing how their different forms affect how they walk through the world is such a cool idea. And I love, also hate, but the visceral dread that I feel of Eshonai now being in storm form and her internal true sense of self screaming at her. Little by little, getting confirmation that the listeners made a very difficult sacrificial choice to get away from their gods, who these gods might be, and watching in real time that come back and seeing Eshonai struggle through that is just such a brilliant storytelling device. It also adds this whole new level of sympathy for these characters that we've only seen from an external perspective for most of this story. Now, having already read Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, I know that we get much more intimate details and get to know them much better in later installments. But at this point in the story, we've only seen them from an internal perspective for such a short time, and yet I have such empathy for them, the choice that they made, what Eshonai and Venli are struggling with, the choices that they have to make, and then seeing the connections being made to the Parshmen by, first Yasna and also Shallan. Seeing those two aspects converge had me, the first time I remember, so stressed about the fact that the Alethi might genocide all of their Parshmen, because now that we know that those are actually listeners in a different form, oh god, I remember the stress that I felt. I happen to know what happens, so that stress is a little less now. But again, that kind of taut string feeling of this aspect of the book is still coming through, even though I know the answers, which is saying a lot. Also, I forgot how much Shallan and Kaladin were slightly pined over each other after their night in the chasms. I'm like, can you both stop that? I don't like you two together. Also, the way that Navani reconciled with Shallan by offering her support for her daughter's research. It was just such a beautiful moment between the two of them. I found myself very touched by the way that Navani approached Shallan and just the unconditional support that she offered and welcoming her into, well, the family as future betrothed, but also just welcoming her as someone that her daughter cared for and showing respect for her research. It was just such a beautiful meeting of the minds, and I loved that moment between the two women. Basically, I'm eating this up and I adore it, and I'm definitely going to finish it today. I have a little bit more work to do today, but afterwards I'm going to go to the gym and have this playing instead of music, because honestly, I would just be pining to be listening to it if I wasn't. So definitely will be finishing this today, and I will update you guys when I do. Okay, so I finished Words of Radiance last night. I was sitting on the couch doing some thumbnails, just kind of getting lost in the audiobook, and before I knew it, it was over. That Sanderlanche is so incredibly good, and the way that all of the little epilogues tie up. I knew that Nightblood showed up in this, but would you like to destroy some evil today? I giggled when that reveal happened, even though I knew it was coming. And Yasna still being alive and waiting for her is the best way for this end to book. This end to book. Good Lord, this book to end. Also with Adolin offing Sadeas, I thought that happened in the second. I need my coffee. I thought that happened in Oathbringer. So what a pleasant surprise when I was like, oh, that happens at the end of this book. No wonder I love this book so much, because God, it was so refreshing when that happened. When his eye popped, I was like, yes. Thank you, Adolin. So this book is so good. When I went to Goodreads to write my thoughts, the first two rereads, I had some decent thoughts on the book, but this time around, I just wrote, damn, I love this book, because it's everything that Sanderson is good at coming to fruition. All of the kind of things about Kaladin. I think I mentioned this when I was talking about The Way of Kings. This has been a while, so I don't quite remember exactly what I said. But in the later two books, Oathbringer, but Rhythm of War especially, his kind of like cyclical, like become a depressive boy and then level up, and then depressive boy, level up, that became too cyclical for me by that book. But this book, it's not there yet, right? So that struggle that he goes through, going down, going up, going down, going up, really hit. And I loved the way that Kaladin came to the realization that he needed to save Elhokar, because like I said, Elhokar annoys the shit out of me. I was like, all right, Moash, do your thing as well. But then you can see when Moash tries to kill Kaladin, you're like, oh, okay, so he's kind of lost himself here. And I just like the way that plot line, while you could see both sides of it throughout most of the book, you are not left wondering if Kaladin made the right choice, because you know that, with the whole experience with Tian, he understands what it's like to have someone that you love that is useless, or deemed useless by others. And the fact that that was the thing that changed his mind is so true to his character, that it wasn't his sense of honor per se or anything else. It was the fact that he knows what it's like to have someone like that you care about. And that was the moment. It's just so beautifully done. Everything about this book is fantastic. Also, Relaine from the listeners, I forgot how much I loved him too, and he showed up. I was like, oh my God, that's right. He shows up in this book as well. There's so many things that I forgot actually happened in this book. Like, I knew they happened throughout the course of the story, but I didn't know it was in here. So yeah, I didn't read this physically, so there are no tabs added this time around, but I don't know if I need to add anymore. Honestly, otherwise, like, every page of this book would be tabbed. I adore this book. Fucking fantastic. So after finishing Words of Radiance last night, I started Edgedancer. I'm using a random Amari and the Night Brothers, like, card that I have, because bookmarks. I know I have a bunch of them, but when I need one, I can never find one. I swear I had them in a little cup at one point, but that cup has disappeared, or I don't know. Anyway, I am about to do sprints, as you can see on here, with some of my patrons. So I need to go and read this, but I am on page 76. I skipped the first part because the first part is the prelude, not the prelude, the interlude that's part of Words of Radiance. So I was like, I'm not reading this again, because I kind of talked about how it annoyed me a bit. And there are points in here where I'm like, wow, God, you're annoying, Lift. But then I love Wendell, you know, and his suffering through being with her. So we'll see. I don't remember almost anything about this book. I remember that I kind of struggled through it. So what I've read so far, I'm like, this is new to me. So we'll see if I remember any part of this, and hopefully I'll make a huge dent in this during the sprints today. I hope to finish this book today because it's only, what, 265 pages, and the print is like quite large and the pages are quite small. So I do think that I can finish this today. I have a little bit more gap, kind of like I had yesterday, between some work that I usually don't have that gap. So really trying to get through this. But I'm gonna be late for my sprint. So I'm gonna go sprint and hang out with my patrons and make some progress in this. So I finished Edgedancer. I read this in 2 sittings. Like I said, I started it last night. Then I had my sprints this morning, made really good progress. And then even after the sprints were done, I just continued reading because, like I said, I had a little bit longer before work today. So yeah, I read this in basically 1 sitting or 2 sittings. And I did tab it up. Thoughts on this? I'm going to give this 3 stars. You know, it was starting off at a disadvantage because I was already annoyed because the main character was Lift, right? But I will say that by the end of this, I was much more sympathetic to her than I was in the beginning. And I have to say that's definitely a sign of Sando's character work. I think I might have mentioned this before the sprints as well, but I love Wendell, and his charm, ironically, is his kind of banter or the way that he interacts with, I almost said Link. My gosh, with Lift. So I don't know what that says about me or how that works. Like, I can dislike one of the characters, but then like the other character for their interactions with that character that I don't like so much. I don't know. Weird. But yeah, I like her more at the end of this book than I did at the beginning. So like I said, that's progress, I suppose. Also, I remembered none of this. Like, I remember physically reading this, but did I? Because I hadn't marked it on Goodreads, strange for me for 1, and 2, I barely remembered any of it. I don't know, I swear I read this, but whatever, now I think I'm gonna remember it. Basically, the really fun part of this for me was the world building and the Cosmere Easter eggs we get in here. The world building of, oh, what's the name? You know, I can't remember names of things. Yedah, which is in Tashik. That's the city that we get to see. And one of my favorite things about the world building in the Stormlight Archive is how Roshar has shifted and adjusted to the high storms and how different places deal with that in different ways. And I loved seeing the way that Yedah dealt with that, being in basically a canyon, how they would deal with the rainwater coming through and the flash floods, all of that. Super interesting, loved it. For the Cosmere Easter eggs, obviously I know a lot more about the heralds now than I did when I first read this book. So being able to see, is it Null, the Herald of Justice, whatever, and his insanity. Some moments in this book were heartbreaking. I'm very sensitive to kids stuff ever since having my daughter. I'm not sure if that sensitivity is ever gonna go away after that, after becoming a mom, so I'm not really, you know, that might be just a new aspect of my reading self I need to adjust to. But the orphanage in here and the way that he was so callous towards that one little thief and just murdered her, I was like, oh my God, you know, I don't know, something about him and him being so brutal and indiscriminate in his murdering really just, it struck me a little bit this time around. But for the Cosmere connections, specifically page 55, I've marked it with 2 tabs, which is how you know it's special. But Wendell is talking about being able to manifest into a shard weapon and that it doesn't have to be a blade. And he says, I must be metal. There is a connection between our power when condensed and metal. And I was like, oh, Okay, are we talking some allomancy here? Are we getting connections to Mistborn? Because we all know that Mistborn Era 1 is not my favorite of his works, but I love the magic system. So, like, little things like that. Well, clearly I didn't remember the story, so I wasn't going to pick up on little things like that. But little things like that stuck out to me. Also, the timing and being able to place this right after the events of Words of Radiance and the Everstorm coming to fruition, that kind of continuation was really nice. Being able to feel like all of these books are part of one cohesive story is a really nice feeling, and Edgedancer definitely had that. Basically, overall, I enjoyed this. I must have because I read it in, like I said, 2 sittings, so I liked it enough to blow through it. Is it my favorite Stormlight Archive installment? No, but I'm not upset at having read it. So now we are moving on to Oathbringer. But I think what I'm going to do, or what I knew what I was going to do, is now that I've finished The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Edgedancer, I'm going to cut this vlog off here. And then the second vlog will be me reading Oathbringer, Rhythm of War, and Dawn Shard. I think I'm on track to get all of these done by the time Wind and Truth come out, which is so exciting. I have a month left, so yay me. I didn't think I was gonna make it, but look at us. Also, with all the life changes that have happened in the last couple months, I really fell off of making the daily kind of check-in life vlogs that I usually do. But throughout the process of really focusing on making this vlog again throughout the last week and a half or so, I remembered how much I enjoy vlogging. So while there's nothing wrong with using your phone for vlogs, I kind of remembered that I have some nicer tech. So I'm going to be upping my game for the second half of this vlog series. I hope to use my vlog camera. Of course, you're also going to see the phone because if I have thoughts in the moment, I'm just going to whip this out and talk to the camera, talk to the phone camera. But you know, you might be getting some nicer mic quality, things like that in the next vlog because I enjoyed making this one so much. Let me know in the comments down below your experience with the Stormlight Archive. Obviously, if you're watching this vlog all the way through, then you've read it because these are full of spoilers, as I made very clear. So I hope you're not watching this if you haven't read it. Like, let's be honest there. So if you're going to put spoilers in the comments, please be courteous to others who maybe watched the very beginning of this and then realized it was going to be spoiler-free, and might scroll down to the comments. You know, just casually say that there are going to be spoilers and leave some spaces, and then go ahead and talk about the spoilery things in the comments. But please be courteous of others when doing that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell. I'd love to have you as part of this community, and I appreciate it. But for now, I'm going to head out. Jenny!